logging camp, talk from their hearts, and move people to accuracy. And that is Troy.
Well, I honestly really do appreciate it, and I have had an opportunity to be in Cumberland County a couple times, and it's a great county. And as I look around the room, all the people that I've had the privilege to meet over the last couple of years, to think, if it hadn't been for some of the things I got involved in, not to ever know you, not to ever know Rachel, you have such a great delegation here, people I've served in the past, and people that just got elected. It really is a shining star for the entire state, and something that the rest of us, because 74 people on a Sunday afternoon for a Democratic committee, I don't see that a lot from where I'm from. So that's, really encouraging. And you have really great people, people that I'm inspired by, and just honored to know. And I know Speaker Gideon's not here today, not able to be here today. Just this week, I talked about how she had a tougher job than me in a lot of respects, because she was a dying officer, and how great she's been, and what a fierce fighter she's been, and right out of Cumberland County here, and you can already see the governor trying to cut a wedge between me and her, and we're not going to let that happen, because that's what we're seeing in this country is this wanting to divide people. And I know it very well, and I know it more of an income inequality issue, but we have it going on, and gender inequality, we have it going on, and race inequality, and it's always the same thing. It's somebody with power that wants to make those without power feel like they have to shut up, they have to take the crowns, they have to just go on with the way they've been going on, and not say anything. And so that's something that I know, really well. Some of you have heard me talk about before, and I'm sorry if you did, but I just don't like to waste your time or anything like that. Harlan was talking about the march last week in Augusta and here in Portland. Well, I had the honor of coming down today for the City Hall and then going over to the airport, and it's just incredible here. But last week, I was honored to go home and actually have 50 people in Fort Kent march. And one of the things that I found out there, my mother was there, one of the things I found out there, when she got pregnant with me at 15, and she was told that she couldn't finish her junior year because she was going to be a blight to the rest of the young women in the high school, so they made her quit high school, and I didn't know that until last weekend. So every chance that we have on these events, you find out things, you have an awakening. What I remember was my mother went back to school at 19, and I was on the school bus with her. As we were going to kindergarten, my mother was going for her junior year, and I didn't think anything of it at the time, but now I think about what a strange but really cool thing that was. But then, like I said, you hear about what happened, her, why she had to take her junior year over again. It's one of those things that, again, someone making someone feel like they can't do what they should be able to, and so it really was a moment for me. But one of the other things that, just so you understand more, that I grew up with two parents that were quite young, and things weren't always great between them because they were all with the financial pressures and things that happen to young people, and they divorced early. And one of the things that I remember was trying to spend time with my father, because I didn't live with him. And one of the times that he took me with him was actually to a strike. way back in, I think, '81. And I remember being at the strike, a whole bunch of men in Allagash. Back then, there was a lot of people in the town compared to today. And whenever the landowner showed up, the big landowner, the thing that he told them was if they didn't go back to work in the morning, he'd replace them all with foreign workers. And it wasn't, you know, anything against people from away or anything like that, but it was very much a reality to me right then that people that have power will do whatever they can to shut you down, to make sure that you don't get out of line. And I didn't understand it then, but what I do remember was standing behind my father and being very scared and thinking that, you know, this one man came and took all of the energy out of the area just like that. He just got back in the car and left. And what I think about today was, or now, is what my father must have felt like standing there with his son behind him, and what, you know, what pride was taken away from you, you know, what dehumanization was taken away from you. So when I see these marches and I see what Trump's doing now, it's so much more awful. But, you know, I understand it in some small way, and I think to myself, that, you know, there's so many of us that's felt that, and there's so many more of us than there are them, that we should be able to stand up and all come together and push back against this type of bullshit. One thing that we have to do is we have to understand that maybe it's not exactly like we know, but it's similar in some way. There's somebody that's being wrong because somebody with power is standing over them and holding them down. And, you know, and that's why I got into politics way back in 2000. Barney talked about being a New Democrat. Well, it's no secret, when I ran for legislature in 2002, I was a Republican. And I had no idea. All I cared about was getting into the legislature because that seemed to be the place that I could actually fix some of the problems that were happening in my area. And I would have ran as anything. I would have ran as a communist. I would have ran. I just wanted to get to a place that I could do something to help the people in my area that I cared about. And so I didn't win, lost a close election to a man. Everyone in my community at the time told me that you're crazy. You're running as a Republican. I mean, you're a Democrat. You know, I didn't know. I mean, I was 20, I think 7 years old. We had just come off a big strike, and what I felt very much in my heart was that government was standing in the way of prosperity for the people that I cared about. They were standing in the way of prosperity for my family and all the people in my town. You know, because what I believed was if you grew up and you played by the rules, you worked hard, that government would protect you. And what I found out during that period was that the government was the ones that were actually screwing us. And they were continuing to, because there was people all around the State House that had lobbyists that were there every day telling you how those people way up in northern Maine were bums. They didn't want to work. You know, they didn't do anything but cause hate and discontent. And for us, it was just, well, we just wanted to survive. We just wanted to work. So, you know, I ran my next time as an independent, got elected, and came down to Augusta with no one really telling me or helping me understand the process. I mean, I didn't have anyone really guiding me at that point. And I was very, very lucky, I think about it now, to get placed on the Labor Committee. Because that's where I saw where the difference between Republicans and Democrats were probably more than you could see it anywhere else. You know, I served on there with some really, really great people. And within a year's time, I decided that, you know, the Democrats were the ones that were fighting for working class people time after time after time. They were fighting for health care. They were fighting to make sure that if you got hurt, you didn't have to, you know, just drag yourself in there extremely happy that I did that. 13 years later, you know, there's been bumps in the road. There's been times I questioned myself, but I don't think I ever questioned what I believed was a commitment of Democrats, that every person should have the same rights, the same ability to advocate for their government and do the right thing. And so now, you know, here we are on this point, this awful point, where you have people that are taking over our government that I don't believe have that same commitment. You know, they want to pull everything back. They want to take away workers' rights. They want to make sure that you don't have health care, because if you have health care, you're a little bit too secure. Maybe you're not doing everything that they want. Maybe you're not jumping as high as they want when they tell you to. And so all these things are starting to, you know, become even more serious to people. And that's why I think you're seeing, you know, these marches and things crop up. And that's a good thing. I mean, it's too bad it takes something as awful as this to have people step up. But you know, I think if we take that energy, and much like Rachel said, you know, we can argue about parties and all that one, but I mean, the Democratic Party, and what I believe the Democratic Party stands for, is the only opportunity to make this right for everyday working class people. And we can do this. You know, it's gonna be hard. There's gonna be things that we lose probably in these next couple of years, but I really think that we can change it. We can bring it back around, because, you know, they're doing things that even the Republicans, the moderate Republicans, look at it and say, well, this is not what we should be doing now. So I think that if we could, you know, fight harder, if we could show up, if we could call elected officials, you know, people call me all the time. They talk about health care, you know, the ACA, and it's an incredibly hard conversation for me, because I know what it's like to not have health insurance. And just January, I went back on government-sponsored health care. And so in Washington, all these people have government-sponsored health care, and they're deciding who else in this country is worthy enough to have it also. And so I think it's appropriate for any one of us to call and say, hey, I don't believe that you should be taking away health care from people in this state, and I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'd be mad about it. And so I think that's the thing, is to stay engaged. Call your elected officials. Don't only call the people in Congress. You know, make sure that my good friend Representative Cumberland hears from you, because you know, we all go to Augusta, and I've had this happen to me before, and we hear a lot about what's going on, but if you don't always hear back home, and I'm not saying that any of us, but if you don't always hear back home how people are feeling, sometimes you get lost in the shuffle. You know, there's so much going on at the State House that you're talking about it right now before I get up here with the referendum. We really have a battle on all those referendums. You know, the legislature would not do what it should have to help people with minimum wage, to make sure that education was fully funded, and the ranked choice voting was clearly something that people have been feeling. And so there's a real battle to keep those 4 referendums. We need to make sure that you let people know. I mean, I believe probably every one of your delegation is on board with that. I'm almost positive they are. But you maybe ought to start reaching out to other places too, because this is a big deal for all of us. And so I would just say that, you know, I really appreciate what you're doing here in Cumberland County. I wish we could push this into other counties up and down the state, and I believe we can. But this is really where, you know, people like myself can point to and say, you know, what they're doing in Cumberland County is something that we should be replicating. So, you know, thank you for all the work you're doing. You know, keep at it. Don't ever think that you can't call somebody way up in Aroostook County and say, hey, you know, I really want you to be fighting for